Imagine an army advancing faster than it supplies an unstoppable force pressing across France in the summer of 1944. Allied divisions, breaking free from the bocage of Normandy tanks, surging forward infantry, riding hard victories, piling up with dizzying speed, and yet a shadow hung over every mile, the shadow of empty fuel cans and dwindling ammunition boxes. For no matter how fast an army moved, it could never outpace its stomach or its fuel gauge, and in that precarious summer, the Allied juggernaut came dangerously close to stalling, not because of the enemy, but because of distance. And that danger gave birth to one of the most daring logistical feats in modern warfare. The Red Ball expressed the rolling artery of victory, a lifeline that pulsed through the war-torn roads of France, carrying the supplies that kept freedom alive. The story begins with triumph and terror on June 6, 1944, D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Allied soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy under withering fire. By nightfall, they had a fragile foothold on the continent. The price in blood was staggering, but the bridgehead held for weeks. The Allies fought through hedgerows, minefields, and fortified villages, a bitter slog against entrenched German defenders in Operation Cobra. At the end of July, the line finally cracked. American armor surged through the gap. Patton's Third Army, unleashed like a coiled spring, began racing across France. Towns fell in rapid succession. German units disintegrated. The French resistance rose in open revolt. Paris itself was liberated on August 25th. In scenes of jubilation, the Allies were on the march to victory. But beneath the euphoria, Eisenhower and his staff faced a crisis of arithmetic. Every mile gained stretched the supply line further from the beaches, where cargo ships unloaded fuel, food, ammunition, and spare parts. Railroads lay in ruins. Bridges were demolished. Ports like Cherbourg and Le Havre had been captured, but rendered useless by German demolition. The port of Antwerp, though intact, was still in enemy hands. The only solution was trucks, tens of thousands of them moving day and night across crumbling French roads. But even this vast fleet was chaotic. Without order, convoys jammed crossroads, supplies piled up in fields, drivers became lost, and the front risked running dry of everything from fuel to rations to bandages. It was clear a radical system was needed, a new artery of supply. And so in late August 1944, the Red Ball Express was born. The name came from railroading. Red Ball designated priority freight that must move without delay on the roads of France. Red circles, painted on white signs, marked the exclusive routes of the express. Convoys of olive-drab trucks would thunder down these one-way arteries, never stopping, never detouring, never slowing, except for breakdowns. Shoved to the side, the rules were merciless: drive fast, keep distance, follow the truck ahead, or risk collision. Every mile mattered, every hour counted. The front demanded 8,000 tons of supplies daily, and the Express had to deliver. The fleet that made it possible was the GMC CCKW, the legendary Deuce, and a 2.5-ton cargo truck. Rugged, simple, and versatile. With 6 wheels, it could haul fuel, ammunition, rations, artillery shells, even wounded men returning from the lines. It burned fuel almost as fast as it hauled it, but in sheer reliability, it was unmatched. Nicknamed the workhorse of victory, the Deuce and a half became the backbone of Allied mobility. Thousands rolled day and night, engines roaring, tires shredding, axles straining across mud, rain, dust, and the shattered remnants of French roads. The men behind the wheels were often young, barely out of their teens. Most had never left America before. Many were African-American soldiers assigned to segregated service units. The Army, still divided by race, consigned black troops to non-combat roles. And yet in the Red Ball Express, these men bore the critical mission. Without them, the front would starve of fuel and ammunition. In all, African-American drivers made up roughly 3/4 of the Express, enduring not only exhaustion and enemy danger, but the bitter sting of racism from comrades and officers alike. They drove anyway, because the mission had to succeed. Imagine the scene in late August: convoys of hundreds of trucks stretching for miles, roaring through the French countryside, headlights dimmed or blacked out to avoid German aircraft, dust rising in choking clouds, drivers gripping steering wheels for 16-hour shifts, eyes burning, bodies aching, always fearing a sudden strafing run from the Luftwaffe or the crack of a sniper rifle from the hedgerows. Fuel can stacked high in the back, sometimes exploding from heat or enemy fire. When a truck broke down, mechanics swarmed, stripping it for parts in minutes to keep the others rolling. There was no pause, no hesitation, for if the convoys falter the armies at the front would stop dead, and Eisenhower knew the war itself could be lost. The statistics defy belief. Between August and November 1944, in just 81 days, the Red Ball Express delivered over 400,000 tons of supplies. At its height, more than 6,000 vehicles operated daily, moving 12,000 tons. Every 24 hours, convoys snaked along routes up to 700 miles, round-trip drivers, often sleeping on the steering wheel. During brief halts, accidents were frequent. Collisions deadly, some trucks overturned into ditches, others burned. When engines failed and fuel ignited, yet the stream never ceased, the lifeblood of victory flowed without end. At the front, Patton demanded fuelless tanks could advance only as far as the gas in their tanks carried them. In one famous episode, his Third Army stood within reach of Germany itself, only to halt for lack of gasoline. Fuming, Patton cursed and waited until convoys arrived. He later admitted the Red Ball Express was the only reason his army continued to fight. The supply line became as important as any battlefield commanders, obsessed over tonnage, gallons, miles, while soldiers at the front prayed to hear the rumble of engines that meant food, ammunition, and fuel were on the way. The German army recognized the danger. They targeted convoys with air raids and ambushes, mines and snipers. Yet the Express endured. Drivers adapted to every threat. Headlights were painted with slits to conceal their beams, tires reinforced with makeshift patches. Convoys rerouted at a moment's notice around craters and demolished bridges. In storms, drivers chained their wheels to claw through mud. In heat, engines boiled over, and men carried water cans to refill radiators. Ingenuity, endurance, and sheer determination kept the system alive. And through it all, the drivers pressed forward, most never armed beyond sidearms or rifles, many never trained for combat, yet they lived with danger daily. One veteran recalled seeing a truck explode in front of him, hit by a sniper's bullet that pierced a fuel can. Another spoke of dodging bombs from Luftwaffe fighters screaming overhead while trying to keep his convoy moving straight. Discipline demanded no stopping, even under fire. The convoy had to keep rolling, for every second lost might mean a stalled tank, a starving soldier, or a delayed attack. Beyond the statistics, the Red Ball Express revealed the hidden truth of modern warfare logistics. Wins wars. Napoleon himself had once declared an army marches on its stomach in 1944. That truth was magnified by machines, tanks, artillery, aircraft, all devoured fuel and ammunition. At staggering rates, Patton's army alone consumed 500,000 gallons of gasoline per day. Only the Express could deliver it. The entire Allied advance from Normandy through France and into Belgium depended on wheels turning night and day. The story of the Express also became a story of recognition for African American troops who for too long had been dismissed as unfit for critical duty. In France, they proved themselves indispensable. Without their labor, courage, and skill, the Express would have collapsed, and the front with it, though still segregated. Their heroism planted seeds for change. After the war, veterans returned home proud of their contribution, demanding equality. Many later marched in the civil rights movement, carrying memories of nights spent on the roads of France, keeping freedom alive for a world that still denied them freedom at home. By November 1940, for the Express gradually wound down as new ports opened at Antwerp and Cherbourg, as railroads were repaired and pipelines built to carry fuel more efficiently. The trucks no longer had to bear the entire burden, but by then they had already delivered the decisive weeks of momentum the Allies needed. Without them, the breakout from Normandy might have stalled, the Siegfried Line might have held the war, might have dragged on into 1946. Instead, Paris was liberated, Belgium secured, and the Allies stood at the threshold of Germany. Yet the legacy of the Red Ball Express lived on in military doctrine. Its lesson, clear logistics. Is war no victory is possible without supply. Eisenhower himself later reflected that the Express had saved the campaign. Modern armies, from Korea to Vietnam to Iraq, carried forward the lessons learned on those roads of France, that trucks, convoys, discipline, and sheer endurance are the lifelines of war. At night, the Red Ball Express became a vision unforgettable to those who saw it. Rivers of red taillights stretching for miles through the French countryside, glowing faintly under the blackout, the sound of engines, a constant thunder in the distance. Soldiers at the front remembered the comfort of those sounds, knowing the trucks were coming, that tomorrow they would have bullets, bread, gasoline, and hope. In 81 days, the Red Ball Express became a legend forged not in parades or medals, but in grit, sweat, danger, and sacrifice. It was a hidden battle behind the battle, the rolling artery of freedom, the reason the Allies could push across France, break through to Belgium, and stand at the gates of Germany by winter. Without it, the story of World War II might have been very different. Without it, the liberation of Europe might have faltered in mud and empty fuel cans. The Red Ball Express stands as a testament to the unsung heroes who proved that wheels and courage can win wars as surely as tanks and guns. History remembers generals, their battles, their strategies, their speeches. But behind every general stood the rumble of convoys, the roar of engines, the steady heartbeat of trucks rolling through the night. The Red Ball Express was that heartbeat pounding unceasing through the roads of France. It was the pulse of victory. And though the drivers' names are largely forgotten, their deeds remain immortal. Every mile they drove carried freedom closer to Berlin. Every gallon of fuel hauled, every shell delivered, every ration carried was another step toward the downfall of tyranny. They were the lifeline of the Allied armies, the unsung victors of the road. The Red Ball expressed the artery of victory, the forgotten highway to freedom, the story of men and machines that kept the war alive, and without whom liberation would have been nothing but a dream. History is full of battles, but the greatest one is keeping their stories alive. Subscribe, share, and like now. Never miss the moments that change the world.